Hi, friends. Hello. Today we're going to be discussing the most interesting, somewhat unbelievable immigration news with me, immigration lawyer from New York, Alena Shautsova. You may find it strange, but Florida is considering almost like employing alligators to guard potential immigrant detainees. United States Supreme Court basically allows Trump's administration to deport people to the countries they've never been to and had no connection with. There is a bill introduced that would allow President Trump to use National Guard that is not supposed to be used for any domestic enforcement. National Guard to be used in connection with immigration enforcement and more. So thank you very much for watching. Again, my name is Alena Shautsova. I'm an immigration attorney from New York. And let me know where you're watching from. Say hello. And of course, type up your questions. Tonight, we're going to be discussing this unbelievable immigration news. And after that, I will be answering your guys' questions. So let's start. This first interesting announcement that Florida is planning on migrant detention center in the middle of the Everglades. And they say it's a perfect location. In case you are not familiar with Everglades, well, I have a little thing for you here. That's a very common situation in Everglades. On my YouTube and Facebook, I am displaying a picture from open sources where a huge snake, a python, is fighting an alligator. So Everglades is like this preserve where this absolutely wild, unbelievable life is taking place, something like from a jungle. And the idea is, according to this media announcement, that immigration detainees will be kept in the middle of the nowhere location so that they will not be escaping. Of course, you would be afraid to escape into something like you just saw, filled with alligators, pythons, and God knows what else, right? Of course, unless you are an alligator wrestler, then you wouldn't care and you probably would be taking your chances. But for most people, this idea is just terrifying that you may be in this facility where this sort of things, maybe they will come to you instead of you coming to them. But in Florida, apparently anything is possible, and they think it's a great idea to build this medieval type of facility in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by water and absolutely out of control wildlife. And I have no idea how they're going to be fighting those things themselves. On the way to that facility, are the people going to be delivered by the helicopters, or there will be some way to go on the ground? But that's what's happening in the United States immigration life. Apparently, they're seriously considering this type of facility to hold immigrants. So, if you've heard something about deportation to South Sudan this week, that the United States Supreme Court allowed Trump's administration to quickly deport immigrants to South Sudan, compared to Florida news, it may be not such a horrible thing, right? South Sudan, probably people live there, and perhaps you will not be kept in a facility surrounded by the alligators. But of course, humor aside, this is unprecedented ruling by the United States Supreme Court, where basically they push aside all due process rights of immigrants, announcing or paving the way for the Trump administration to quickly deport people to countries they had no connections with and had no idea they will be deported to. Just so you know, when immigration proceedings are started against the person, there are allegations contained in a document called notice to appear. And that notice to appear usually things charges against you. let's say that you're not a citizen or national of the United States, you're a citizen national of country B, and so on and so forth. And during the first master hearing, what's happening is that if you file for asylum, you respectfully decline to designate the country of removal, and the government designates the country of removal. And usually it's your home country or the country where you resided prior to coming to the United States on a permanent basis. It's never been in a history, even though there is a provision of law that if deportation, physical deportation is to your home country is impossible and practical, the United States may deport you to a third country, but it's never been in the history of the United States immigration where people would be displaced to the countries where they had no connection with without due process and without a notice. And in fact, the federal judge ruled that that should not be happening. And this practice where people were grabbed and put to El Salvador and were sent to South Sudan was stopped by a low court federal judge. But the United States Supreme Court stopped that judge's decision just on Monday, allowing Trump's administration to basically deport people without notice. That they can do it, sure, this is the law, but they should provide a person an opportunity to fight that intention. If the person may show that they will still be in danger in that third country that the United States wants to send them to, they shouldn't be deported there. That was the general principle of the United States immigration law, but no longer so. Apparently, you can be grabbed and sent to South Sudan, El Salvador, or maybe some other place you've never known existed on a map, because that's where we're at. Again, compared to the alligator guards, I guess that's not such a horrible news, maybe not so surprising. Another interesting piece of news that in addition to all of that, Republicans are introducing a bill where they're going to use military, they will ask for an authorization for the military to be used in connection with immigration domestic enforcement. And again, there is a law saying that you cannot do that, but they're going to try to change that law. Imagine instead of 20,000 ICE agents, all of a sudden you're going to have 500,000 ICE agents, right? It's not funny, I understand, but that's where we're at in our immigration life, about 5 months from the point when President Trump took office the second time in the United States. And that's why I called my stream Unbelievable Immigration News, because to date, we have never seen anything like that, right? And you can share your thoughts on that. Please comment, just be respectful. And of course, we're going to discuss now whatever else you would like to discuss. If you are not shocked by all this announcements and you still have questions related to your immigration cases, I'll be very happy to answer them. I personally, when I read this news, I was shocked, I'll be honest. Because as I said, in the country that is proud of human rights movements and the countries that pioneered the rights of women and minorities and always been in the front of the human rights and due process. To see something like this is simply unbelievable. But how they say never. I guess that's exactly what's happening. All right. Hi, BMVA. Do you think a person was granted asylum and no criminal record or anything can be deported to a third country? Well, it's a great question. While you have your asylum status, you cannot be deported, but the government may take that status away from you. They should have a good reason for that. Maybe they would like to terminate your asylum status because your country conditions changed, or perhaps you committed certain act that now you are deportable, and then you either will be placed in removal deportation proceedings, or they will send you a notice of intention to terminate your status. And if they make a final decision that you should be deported, then Can they deport you to a third country? Well, according to the recent developments, yes, they can. If your own country doesn't take you, for example, you don't have a valid passport, right, to be sent to your home country, they usually would not accept you. They would not accept that flight where you're going to be booked on. Then the government will try to send you to some third country. And as I said, those countries on the list, I believe, of the countries that are agreeing to take United States immigrants, one of them is El Salvador, with their infamous prisons. Then there is South Sudan. And then I believe they spoke to somebody else. If I'm not mistaken, it was Guatemala. That's another country that President Trump, his administration is in negotiations, but I may be wrong on that. A country that may be taking the United States immigrants. All right. So that's what's going on. So technically, I guess they can. I hope they won't, but hopefully they won't. All right. Let's see. Do you guys have more immigration related questions? Again, please be respectful. It is, I know it's crazy and this news are just completely insane, but that's where we stay right now. And of course, you as an immigrant in the United States, you want to know that, because when you make decisions about your future, I think it's important to be properly informed. All right. Just send back to home country or allow the people to let go by themselves on cost. Why are they so cruel? Hi, Chan. No, they do allow you to leave on your own if that's what you choose, but not after you have an order of removal and you're detained. So you're free to leave the United States at any moment. They're not going to stop you. In fact, there is an app that encourages you to do so. And they even say they're going to give you a stipend upon proof that you left the United States, right? But once they grabbed you and you're subject to this called mandatory detention, then you cannot leave on your own. And they will not allow you to buy your own ticket. Okay, that's what's happening. That's what's going on. So you just have to, be aware of that when you are, building a strategy for your immigration case. Well, guys on TikTok, thank you very much for your hearts and your patience. If you have questions, please let me know. Good mornings. Some of us have good nights and some of us have good morning. Isn't it awesome? Internet is an amazing thing. Hi, man. People with withholding or removal are safe. Well, typically, people with withholding or removal are safe. However, this administration deported at least one person who had withholding or removal whose due process rights were not observed, right? This is a famous case of the man from El Salvador who was deported to El Salvador, and there was a big battle about him in federal courts, and federal judge ordered the government to bring him back. Well, they did bring him back, I believe, but they started a criminal case against him. But usually what's supposed to happen, if you have withholding of removal, you're not supposed to be grabbed and sent back to your home country without the judge rescinding his order to withhold your removal. All right. So usually you're supposed to be allowed to present evidence that you're still in danger in your home country, and they shouldn't be just grabbing and sending you. Technically, you should be safe, right? Hi, G Ghost. Can you come to Arlington if you hire me? Of course, we can travel to anywhere you would like us to come. The only thing is that when you hire an out-of-state attorney, you'll have to pay higher cost because that lawyer's ticket and stay out of state will have to be paid for. Unlike for a local attorney, right? A local attorney stays hopefully in their home and they don't charge you extra money for the hotel. That's the difference. We also can request remote appearances, and many judges do not object to that, so you don't have to incur those extra costs, okay? But it depends on the judge if they allow that. They were in a country they had no ties to and did just fine. Well, it's different. Don't you guys think that South Sudan is different from the United States? In fact, I looked it up. South Sudan has a horrible record of human rights violations. They had like a civil war of some sort, and there's a horrible hunger crisis there. So deporting you to a country that has no resources, taking care of their own citizens, is just cruel. It's unbelievable, unbelievable. Okay. Hi, eyes on Gambia. Can people still do cancellation of removal? Of course, if you qualify for cancellation of removal, you may apply for it. You may apply for asylum. It's not that nobody can receive any status. Absolutely not. If you qualify for adjustment of status, this is a green card in affirmative process, let's say, through a family member or employment sometimes, right? Or investment. Or you can qualify for it in removal proceedings as well sometimes. If you qualify for cancellation of removal, withholding of removal, asylum, you can absolutely apply depending on your qualifications. You will be granted, right? If you convince the judge that you should be granted. But you see, what's happening here is that when people perhaps who are the targets right now? Why are we discussing these mass deportations? Well, in the United States, there are a lot of people who didn't apply for anything, right? They didn't apply for anything, or they filed their cases, they lost them, and now they have orders of removal, and they didn't do anything about those orders of removal. So those are the people who are either targets for deportations, those are the people who are being grabbed. If you've been in the United States for more than 2 years, and you don't have status, typically you will be placed in removal proceedings where you should be given a chance to defend yourself. At least a chance, okay? But if you lost your case a long time ago and never left, then you are in the worst situation ever. Why? Because government can remove you, okay, if there is no stay of removal filed. And government can also put civil fines on you, almost $1,000 per day for each day that you didn't depart the United States after the order of removal. For that reason, you could have heard news that there was a lady from Florida who received this notice of the government intending to fine her almost $3 million, right? Or another group of people who is a target, those who have criminal charges. Criminal charges, not necessarily convictions, all right? So what happens to those people? They're being grabbed, they're being placed in detention. In fact, they're saying that currently there are about 60,000 people in immigration detention, and almost half of them don't have criminal records. Those are the people with outstanding orders of removal and people who are just waiting perhaps for their deportation proceedings and bond hearings. So they're trying to be tough on immigrants to show that you will be detained, you won't be hanging here after the order of removal, and that's what it is. They also are issuing notices to appear to people who lose their USCIS cases. So that's what's happening. But it doesn't mean that you can absolutely not qualify for anything. That's not what it is. If you have a chance for T visa, U visa, VAWA, please file, all right? At least you're going to have something pending. And even if they try to deport you, it's not going to be easy for them usually, all right? Thank you very much, SS. Thank you guys for your nice words and your gifts and your likes and hearts. Can you self-deport? What is the process? How long does it take? In the United States, you can just buy a ticket and go home. Nobody's going to ask any questions. They don't really care. However, before you do that, just to make sure that you truly not losing a chance for status in the United States, consult with an immigration attorney. About 2 weeks ago, I consulted with somebody who is now overseas. That person resided in the United States for like 30 years, right? And after they heard this news about enforcement and detention, they called some lawyers, they said, and the lawyer said there is nothing they can do. And the person left. Well, guess what happened? Now they realized they won't see their grandchildren ever unless the grandchildren will be able to travel to the person's home country. And they asked me, how can I come back legally? And I said, you know what? If you didn't leave and the government placed you in the removal proceedings, you would have a chance to file for the cancellation of removal. But because you left, now you have a permanent bar and you have another bar, and you must remain out of the United States for 10 years unless you're going to be filing for waivers. So they're like, oh my God, why nobody told me that? I said, I do not know why they didn't tell you that. So self-deportation is an option. Just make sure that you don't miss an opportunity to qualify for cancellation of removal, U visa, T visa, VAWA, and things like that. Okay. Just know that, sometimes there are options maybe you were not aware of. Okay. What is the meaning of your rights and privileges in I-130? Hi, downtown. I-130 doesn't give you any status. I-130 is an alien relative petition that is filed by your U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident relative for you, right? And what it does, it reserves the immigrant visa. You may be able to use it right away in the case of immediate relatives, or you may have to wait for the priority date to become current to use it. So that's what I-130 is, all right? How about you have an order of removal and try to terminate it, but I can't. Married citizen I-130 is approved. All right, so you have an order of removal and you try to reopen your case, right? So that you can adjust status, but something didn't add up there. There is something called motion to reopen sua sponte that you can file as many times as you want. There is no limit as to how many times. So if it didn't work out once, maybe you build a stronger case and you refile. That's what you do, all right? Hi, Blairim. Do I have to update my social security number because it says for work only, but I have my green card? Absolutely. Once you guys get a green card status, you have to inform Social Security office about that. Well, before Trump came to the office, it was supposed to be done automatically. They had plans about that. But now I guess that this whole automatic thing with Social Security office has stopped. So you need to make an appointment with Social Security office, let them know that now you have a permanent status, and they will send you a new Social Security card saying, without these words, valid with authorization only. All right? Guys, don't forget to share the stream so you will help me out a little bit to grow my channel. And I'll be answering your guys' questions as we speak to help you guys out, to point you in the right direction, right? When you are looking for your immigration answers. Thank you very much, guys, on TikTok. The TikTok followers are very, very active always. Let's see. Hi, Mr. Chen. I'm asylum pending, but I have a restaurant and commercial auto. Should I sell all those? I worry if I get interview and in case I fail, I won't have time to sell my business and fix assets. All right. So this is another very good question. Like, you lived in the United States for a very long time, right? And you accumulated like houses, maybe some property or business and things like that. What do you do about that? Well, if you're just waiting for your asylum interview, you need to know that if you don't win your asylum case after the interview, you most likely will be referred to court. And in court, you're going to have a second chance to explain to a federal judge how you qualify for asylum. Okay? So you're not going to be grabbed right away. You're not going to be detained. They're going to give you a chance to prove your case again. It's very important to understand that. So you're probably going to have a lot of time. But as for your assets, listen, you should have a plan as to how to liquidate your assets in case of you losing your case eventually after the appeals and everything. But I wouldn't be selling everything now unless you're ready to depart. Why would you do that? All right. You can consult with what we call trust and estates attorneys. You can have a trust, for example, and put your assets into a trust. So irrevocable trust, it's like a person, it's like a box. that nobody can touch. All right. And if you put your assets into this box, they basically safe very often from any kind of enforcement. But again, I'm not that attorney, and you should get a proper consultation from a trust and estate lawyer from your state. Of course, you should have a power of attorney given to a trusted person who will be able to manage your accounts, manage your mortgage if you have, and things like that, right? So you just plan for the future. That's what you should do. But I wouldn't be just without consulting with professionals, selling everything and freaking out, because it's never a good idea to do that. What if you win your case? What if you're going to, work with a good lawyer and you guys going to get enough evidence and they're going to prepare you very well and you're going to win your case? And then you solved everything already. Hi, Maria. Can ICE check a person with a U visa? The U visa is private information. Oh, yeah, they can. So all this, what we call humanitarian private reliefs that you file for, asylum, VAWA, U visa, T visa, they're not confidential within the federal law enforcement. So you would understand. They cannot share it to non-immigration agencies without proper steps to be followed. But for them, it's not a secret, okay? Hi, more asylum seeker has been in the United States for 8 years. He's referred to immigration court. All right, so again, in immigration court, you have a second chance of proving your case. So don't give up, all right? Don't give up. A family that self-deports together will be together. Okay, well, great. All these people who are like, what are these immigrants are doing here? They just should leave, and so on. You should look at yourself. How about your parents, your great grandparents? What if they would just left? Where would you be? It's nice sitting on your couch judging others when your ancestors most likely, right, came to the United States running from all kind of different wars and genocide and things like that. But a little bit later, all of you forgot what it was and why you're here. The United States was founded by refugees who were seeking religious freedom, right? What if local population would start deporting them instead? You guys are interesting people, I have to say. If immigration judge denied your asylum case and ordered removal, all right, Gadi, what is your question? But you're waiting for the decision from the appeal. Can you still be removed? No, not usually. When you file an appeal after immigration judge orders you removed, that order of removal does not become final, and they cannot just grab you and send you. Okay? Anyway. Hi, Rose, it's been 2 years and no response from USCIS I-130 of my husband, and I have a green card. That's normal, Rosie. Because you guys are in the preference category, I-130s are taking longer to be decided by USCIS. That's totally normal, okay? Let's see. Thank you guys very much for your gifts and for your nice words. Let's see if we have more questions. Hi, Juan and Eve. Let's see what's going on. I'm concerned since USCIS says they haven't scanned my RFE response, but I sent it 2 months ago and you have the proof. I have to tell you that recently I've noticed something is peculiar is happening with USCIS. We don't receive receipts. It takes a very long time to receive them when we do. And you should absolutely follow up with them. If you have USCIS account, upload that proof that they received the response and a little letter, like asking, placing like an inquiry. If you don't have an account, then mail the letter with a copy of your RFE and prove that it was delivered on time to the same place where you were mailing mailing the RFE response. That's how I would handle it probably. Just saying, listen, I'm not submitting an RFE response because I already submitted it on time. Here is proof. But I'm concerned because I don't hear anything. What's the worst thing that can happen? They will reject it as unsolicited mail. It's not gonna really do anything to you, right? Hi, Oxy. Yes, you can, Foxy, you can ask me questions. Thank you very much for your gifts. All right. If they just didn't scan it, that's not the problem, though, right? You send it in time, they received it, and it just takes them a long time to scan it. So you shouldn't worry much about that. All right. Hi, resend this. I can request for military parole in place if my daughter was uncharacterized discharge from the army. Can you file for military parole in place if your daughter was discharged other than honorably from the army, uncharacterized? I've never seen such a situation, but why not? Go for it. I don't think. First of all, you need to know something, that parole in place is a discretionary thing. It's not guaranteed that they're going to. Thank you, Foxy, for your cute gift. Thank you so much. It's not guaranteed that they will approve it anyway. I don't remember that the guidelines would refer to any bars for you to receive parole in place if somebody was discharged this way. But hey, you can talk to an attorney privately. Perhaps you should discuss with them the reasons for the discharge, just so there are no surprises, okay? And depending on what happened, then they will be able to advise you whether or not you should move forward with your application. And if you want to consult with my office, please do so. I'll be very happy to help you guys out. But you do need to make an appointment, and we do charge for consultations, private consultations. But you can reach me at 917-885-2261. All right. So I would say that I would need to speak to your daughter to see what happened first, because sometimes there are interesting situations which maybe the federal government may have access to, right, that you may not want to be vetted. All right. Let's see. If you have time, I need some legal advice. Hi, Foxy. If you have a quick question, I'll be happy to answer it here. But if it's a private question, don't share any confidential information. All right. Then you have to have a consultation. Can a green card asylee travel internationally with a regional passport? No, exam. Once you receive a green card based on asylum, technically you are considered a person without citizenship, believe it or not. Do not use your old country's passport. Apply for travel document. I know it's hard and they're given for only 1 year and you constantly have to reapply, but please trust me, especially with this administration, you do not want to risk your citizenship. Why? Because when you're going to be filing for that citizenship, there is a question there. Where did you travel within the past 5 years? And you have to list all the places. And then they ask you to give them all your travel documents and passports. What are you going to do? You're going to, they will have a record that you went to Italy, for example, but your travel document would not show that you went to Italy, okay? And they'll be like, well, how did you go to Italy? And you don't want to be in that position, okay? You want to be truthful. You want to have everything to go smoothly for the N400. You don't want to be in that position. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's see what else we have. Hi, Mohammed. Why you skip some questions? Oh, Mohammed, I'm trying not to skip questions, but the way TikTok works, the line is like very, I don't see all the questions, so I have to like scroll down all the time, and sometimes I admit questions may get lost. I apologize. All right. Hi, Maria. My name is Alena. Is it safe to apply I-212 or 9601A due to removal married citizens? Is it safe for you to file for those waivers to fix your situation now when you know that when you file the waivers, you will be announcing before eyes that you are still here, right? Is it safe? No, I wouldn't say that it's a completely safe. How can I say that? I know that it will be risky. The level of the risk perhaps depends on the jurisdiction and what's happening with ICE in the location and in general where you're filing. What you should do, however, is if you decide that that's what you want to do, you should have a backup plan and perhaps consider something called administrative stay of removal. That application is filed with ICE, and when you show to them that you have a pending waiver and you have a chance of fixing your status some other way, usually when they're not in a rush to meet quotas, they're not going to deport you. But do you bear certain risk when you yourself go before immigration saying that, listen, I have an order of removal here, but I want to file for XYZ? Absolutely. If you file for I-130 and you have an order of removal, that risk usually is very small. In New York, okay? In most jurisdictions, I never had a situation where after you file an I-130, and even if you're called for the interview, at least not in New York, you're going to be arrested by ICE. But in certain jurisdictions, it's different, like Florida, Miami. They announced themselves that they were grabbing people who appeared for USCIS interviews because the people had those outstanding orders of removal. So I would think that you should consult with a local lawyer where you are at and with an attorney where the order of removal is from, because that's where you're going to be filing those applications. Okay, the I-212. All right. And also, why don't you see if prior to file for these waivers, you can file a motion to reopen, if it's going to help you. I don't know if it will, if you can benefit from it. Motion to reopen with a motion to stay the removal while they're deciding motion to reopen. All right. So that's what I would probably do. But guys, again, consult with a lawyer. All right. See what option is doable for you, what backup plans you may have, and things like that, because we're talking about your life here. You have to be super careful. All right. Especially if you have family in the United States, especially little children. There are certain things that I would recommend to an adult without children that I would never say a person who has minor kids should undertake at this time. You understand? Because when we have family members and when we have little children who depend on us, then we have to take that into consideration first before we make our plans. Wouldn't you agree? Right? Wouldn't you agree? Hi, SSC Heart. How long does it take to get approved 221G after we send all the documents? All right, so you're asking when the consul is going to make a decision after you provide documents requested as a part of the administrative processing, right? Because 221G, it's this administrative processing. There is no timeline for them to make a decision. But if your issue was resolved, usually within like maybe 30 days, you're going to have your answer. And they're nice, all right? Because as I said, they don't have to make a decision, okay? Just know that. Hi, ... What do you recommend to parents that don't have legal status but have minor kids that are US citizens? Well, how young are the children? That's important. Are they 17, 16, or are they 8, 7, or 4, right? Are they super young or they're under 21? How long the parents resided in the United States for? Has it been 10 years or less? Did these parents try to have their status fixed in the past and it didn't work? When did they arrive to the United States? Do they have any family members, like parents, who are also in the United States? So the parent potentially may qualify for I-601A waiver. I need to know all this information before I would advise anybody. What they can file for, if anything, what their options may be if they're placed in removal proceedings. Some people may qualify for something called withholding of removal. They could have missed that deadline to file for asylum, but nevertheless, they have a legitimate fear of going back to their home country. And they still may qualify for something. It's not going to be a green card, but it may be a work permit and permission to remain in the United States, waiting for their kids to turn 21. So it all depends on the parents' situation, guys. All right. I know it must be terrifying when you have little kids and you're worrying about being picked up and stuff. Hi, Gadi. Does asylum appeal have any time frame for a decision to be made? Nope. Board of Immigration Appeals may literally take forever. Thank you, Mohammed, for your gift. Let's see what question you have. What about the green card for refugee who came to the United States under the High Commission on Refugees, United Nations, right? So you were admitted to the United States as a refugee. You can file for the green card, but currently those applications are on pause. The government of the United States announced that they're not being considered, that they redoing the procedure or something. I'm not sure. Like they looking into the ways, I guess, to change something or to establish new ways to do what they call deep background checks. All right. So I think that's what's happening with this category of green card seekers, asylees, and refugees. Asylee is when you receive asylum status from the United States. A refugee is somebody who gets admitted at the border because they were vetted by the United Nations. And that's the difference between the two groups. Okay? So currently, they don't give the green cards to people who enter the United States in refugee status or received asylum in the United States. But should you file? Yeah, I think you should file. So the application is pending, and you don't wait too long to file your case. Is it safe to travel with a refugee travel document as an asylee? Yeah, Juan, it's usually safe. As long as you don't go to your home country, please, okay? But the home country is not going to take you on the refugee travel document anyway. So it's safe. You just verify that the country you're going to with that document accepts that document instead of passports. It's very important. Some countries do not because they're not a part of International Convention on Refugees and Asylees. All right? All right. Let's see if we have more questions. Can I get some information about T visa bona fide determination? T visa bona fide determination. Well, not sure. Okay, so T visa is a visa for victim of human trafficking. When you file for the T visa, the process is pretty quick. It's not a U visa. For the U visa, they issue bona fide determination, and it serves like, I don't even know what it's for except for the work permit. The same thing with VAWA. Technically, they're saying that when they give you this bona fide determination, you should be able to qualify for some benefits. But recently, states stopped processing a lot of benefits because they're afraid of the federal government and they received some sort of directions not to do it for the immigrants. So, like health insurance agents, for example, are not helping, many of them at least not helping immigrants to get health insurance, even when state local guidelines may allow for that, so that you know. So those bona fide determinations, they mean actually nothing and don't really protect you from anything, just so you understand. Okay? It's just an indication that on the face of the application, you may have a chance for to win your case, but it's not an indication that your case will be approved. All right? All right. Hi, peace on earth. Oh my God, thank you very much for your gift. My mom left with a green card 5 years ago. Her sister is not feeling well and was not to come visit her. Is she banned from America? Well, somebody who had a green card and they left the United States and stayed out of the United States for more than 6 months and more than a year, there is a presumption that they abandoned their green card status and they lost it. However, there is a procedure to try to restore it. It's called returning resident visa. A person would have to contact the United States consulate in their home country where they're at and tell them that they would like to apply for it. Present proof as to why they remained out of the United States for such a long time. I can imagine that it seems that your mom left the United States during the pandemic, right? Because if we count 5 years back, it will be 2020. That's exactly when the pandemic started. So it seems that at least portion of the time was under the pandemic situation, and it's very important. So if I were your mom, before I would completely give up, would try to get a green card under new petition, I would probably try to restore my green card by filing for the returning resident visa. Okay? That's what I would do. Explaining that she had certain reasons why she left and then how she couldn't come back, right? During the pandemic, I'm sure that that was the case, that some of the time she couldn't return while the pandemic was flourishing and nobody could return. And once that was over, she was probably stuck, unsure what to do. And then she should file for this returning resident visa. I would prepare documents. You know what I would do? I would prepare documents showing when she was initially planning to go back. Maybe she had this two-way ticket once she first left the United States. Also, a person like that would have to show that they plan to come back, right? Not only the ticket, but perhaps she kept paying some kind of a bills in the United States, had a lease. Maybe she kept in touch with her employer. Maybe she worked for them remotely, things like that. Like, see whatever ties with the United States she can produce, and then evidence explaining why she remained and when. Timeline is very important. And of course, that she was, the reason why she left was the illness of her very close relative, how close they were. Things like that. That's what I would do. All right. But you need to contact the consulate in the home country and ask them to allow you to file for this returning resident visa, because they're going to explain the procedures. They have like an application form and they say what to do and how. So that's how it's done. And then they will make a decision what they will decide. If they're not too mean, your mom has a chance of coming back with the green card. Another thing that they're going to look at, if they don't grant her this application, will she has another chance for a green card? Like, does she have an adult U.S. citizen child who can refile for her, right? So how important for her to restore this green card? That's like a factor that we usually show as well when we work on cases like that. Okay. All right, let's see. I'm gonna answer a couple more questions from TikTok. Thank you guys very much for your hearts. I have almost 5,000 hearts. Oh my God, thank you guys so much. Don't forget to follow so that we can meet again. All right. Watching from Jamaica. Hi, Keaton. Thank you for joining. Can I apply for a motion to get the earliest date from the Immigration Court of San Francisco? You can absolutely file a motion like that. Will it be granted? That's a different story. Sometimes it makes sense to file motions like that if you can show urgency, maybe inavailability, future, perhaps danger of losing your witnesses, right, or things like that. Then it makes sense to do so. But immigration court is like an administrative court. If you are in danger of losing your witness, all they can tell you is that, why don't you request an affidavit from that person under oath, right? So that may not work. What would be the reason for you to want to have your date earlier? Make sure that you're going to be happy with your choice if they give you that date. Some people don't realize that if the court would speed up their case, they would not really benefit from it. All right, especially now, if you're trying to fight your asylum case, I have to tell you that decisions that are coming from the judges and Board of Immigration Appeals are more conservative than ever, especially if you're trying to argue something called asylum based on the membership in a particular social group. Now it's not the time for those claims. So before you make a request to the judge, make sure you have good reasons and you can explain and document them. And that if you do get that date, you would want to have the strongest case possible, factually, very well prepared case, and winnable under the current recent developments in law. And if you're sure that you're going to win your case rather than getting deported, right, quickly, then go for it. But be careful. All I can tell you. Hi, Fide. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your nickname. If someone applying for green card based on asylum case, normally, how long will it take? Normally it would take about 9 months. But recently the government of the United States stopped processing such applications. That's why you may be waiting and nothing is happening. All right? Is it safe to file a motion to reopen with an approved I-130? Probably, but you should also file a motion for stay while the motion is pending. All right. Asylum seeker pending came in August of 2023. Should I be worried about deportation? Hi, Shetty. Should you be worried? Anybody who came to the United States on a parole or without a visa and has been in the United States for less than 2 years may be, not necessarily will, but may be placed in expedited removal proceedings. What happens in those proceedings? If you have a strong asylum case, you will win, okay? But in expedited removal proceedings, the only thing that you can file for is asylum, withholding, or removal, or CAT. CAT is not the meow cat, it's Convention Against Torture Relief, all right? In the regular removal proceedings, you can file for other things, like adjustment of status, for example, if you're adjustable. So that's the difference. In an expedited removal proceedings, the biggest difference now is that you are detained. So technically, it's harder for you to fight for your case because it's hard. Even to talk to your lawyer, it's hard when you're in detention. Like, I had a client who was in detention and I asked for a visitation with that client. And they gave it to me only a week later. And I was very upset because I'm supposed to have access to my clients like within 24 to 48 hours. And what I'm gonna do? Sue them for that? You know? It's like there is no time in the world to deal with that. It's just very upsetting. So that's why it's so hard to work with detained clients, because there is this physical barrier between you and the client that you don't have access to them. It's hard to go over the story. It's hard to prepare documents. You have to mail something to them. They receive mail in some facilities only once a week. And then there is a collection of the mail on the other day, also once a week. So it takes like 2 weeks to get a response from a client. It's a nightmare. So that's the hard part, right? Let's see. Hi, CK. I moved to a new house, but didn't change address. Oh, can I do that at the interview? Interview scheduled. When did you move? When did you move to a new address? You have to change your address, file for change of address within 10 days of your move. All right, that's the law. Especially these days when they say they're going to be criminally charging you for not following that law. I would recommend you to file for the change of address as soon as possible. All right, as soon as possible. Hi, Kitten. Waiting for 1 year and 7 months now. Okay, let me see what you filed for. Green card after. How long does it I-130 take to? Okay, how long does it I-130 take to prove if a green card holder filed it? Right, so it's gonna take a long time. Why? Because when the person who filed for you only a green card holder, you are in a preference category of cases, and they take like 3 years to get processed. That's why USCIS is not hurrying to make a decision on the case and not in a hurry, right? And that's why it's going to take a long time. But eventually the case probably will be approved, right? If you guys have a real relationship, and will be fine. If your relative also receives citizenship in the meantime, then the case is going to be faster as well. Okay. All right, guys. I'm going to answer one last question for today. See, while I was talking to you, I was making this flower made out of paper. Let's see. That's how nicely you treat me today. So I have only flowers in my soul for you. Only good things. Hi, Sandu. I had my ISAP appointment last week in Texas. Everything went well, like you said. Thank you for your advice. Sandu, I'm very, very happy for you. All right? I'm very, very happy for you. Of course, not every appointment with ICE is going to result in detention. Absolutely not. It's stressful to go there because you kind of like don't know what's happening. But sometimes they just want to make sure they know where you're at and they keep track of you. And typically, if you complied with all of their conditions, like you update your address, you should be fine, right? You should be okay. All right, let's see. One more question. Hi, Raj. If someone come from Europe on visitor visa, I guess, can they possibly get any legal status? Sure, but it's going to be hard. Is a visitor visa, if it's well, let me ask you. If that person arrived on something, because people from Europe can arrive on something called visa waiver. Visa waiver people traditionally could only ask for asylum or adjustment of status based on a petition by US citizen. And they have to be married to them. They have to qualify as immediate relatives. Plus, this can be approved, the adjustment of status, only if ICE doesn't try to deport them prior to the approval, because it's a visa waiver. Okay. If a person comes on the visa, they had a visa sticker in their passport. Visa waiver is when you don't have a visa sticker, like visa in the passport. But if you do have a visa in your passport, then you have more options. One can file for a change of status. One can file for adjustment of status. Let's say if they qualify for EB1, employment-based, adjustment of status and the priority date is current, they can file for that, right? So they're going to have more options. That's the difference between visa waiver entrant and somebody who is from Europe and entered on the visa. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining today and participating. Thank you for sharing, liking, sending so many hearts and likes. I truly appreciate that you help my channel to grow. If you need a private meeting with me for immigration purposes, please contact my office 917-885-2261 or go to my website shautsova.com and I'll be happy to see what is the best solution for your particular case. And for now, please stay informed, safe. We're going to meet again if you follow me on Friday night. If everything is good, I will hold another live as I do every week. I usually come live a couple times a week. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day or night, depending